Hey there, welcome back to the channel. so yeah, so today I wanted to talk about a little more about this, the pump and dump on GameStop on GME. Now, there was a video on Meet Kevin, and he had because he's got a big channel, he's like moving and shaking there, but he had an interview with the CEO of M1 Finance, I believe it was. And what he was asking him about was basically like, hey, what happened with this, what really happened with the Robinhood and this GameStop and them halting people from buying shares, what was really going on there. It was kind of interesting because, this guy was, at least from what I understood, was like, there was kind of like basically it sort of appears, at least the way I interpreted it, is that yeah, there was a liquidity problem there. So basically, as far as that goes, it was like the people at the clearing houses, that DTC or whatever, but there's also other companies that can interface to them. But basically, whoever is involved in clearing is basically concerned that the company or one of the companies will not have the money to actually have enough money to deliver on the trade, and so this was sort of portrayed as, oh, this was sort of an issue of, clearing firms being concerned that, oh, they might get in trouble and they might have a liquidity problem, or they were maybe concerned about Robinhood's liquidity, that type of thing. But I interpreted it a little different, and I'm not sure that that this was kind of clear. See, what I was hearing was that it was actually a much bigger problem because the CEO talked about it several times. He talked about, hey, if it's basically the collateral, it's basically it's counterparty risk. So let me explain how counterparty risk works. And this is what happened in the financial crisis. So when you look at what happened with Lehman Brothers going down and the stock market crash and all the problems with pensions and all that stuff that happened in 08, 09, it was counterparty risk. And what happened there, one of the things that happened there with Bear Stearns and Lehman was that companies started to refuse to do business with them because they were concerned that, hey, they might not be solvent, so they don't want to do business with them. But here's the deal. Let me explain how this works. Counterparty risk. So, for example, let's say you and I make a bet, okay? And I bet you $100 that someone's going to win the Super Bowl. Let's say I bet you $100 is that that's not a good example. That's kind of old. Let's say it could be anything, right? But let's say I bet you $100 that the stock market opens up 1%, greater than 1% tomorrow, and you say, oh, I'll take that bet. So you're betting that it doesn't open up greater than 1% tomorrow morning, right? So we take this bet. So here's the thing. Let's say it opens up and I win the bet. And it's like, okay, great, I won the bet. Give me the $100. And it's like, oh, I don't have the money. And then what if you don't have the money? So what is going on there? It's counterparty risk. See, like, I'm not going to make a bet with you if I am not confident that you can actually pay on your bet. And this is what counterparty risk is. And this is what they were talking about. Now, it's even more interesting because let's take this example again. I bet you $100 that something happens and you're taking the other side of the bet that it doesn't happen. But what we do is we're financial institutions. And so what we do is we go through a clearinghouse and we say, okay, an independent party is going to, take both our money, for example, and going to hold it as collateral to make sure that we pay on this bet. But now let's say we've been betting a lot before and the clearinghouse is like, look, everyone's good for the bet. So just put up $10 of the 100. Each of you put up $10 because, everything's been cool, And so and how it was expressed in this interview, how it works is that, well, if for some reason I win the bet and you don't pay and you only put up $10 and you have no more money, you've declared bankruptcy, then the clearing firm is stuck paying me. And everyone that participates in the clearing firm is stuck paying me, making me whole. And that's the way it was portrayed. And so that's very interesting, right? So now you see the clearing firm is concerned with any member, any person using them, because if that institution goes bankrupt, they're going to be on the hook. Now, it's not just them being on the hook. They're going to go to all the other members that are clearing. So there could be 100 other people clearing that are going to be like, look, this guy welched on $90. So we need the $90. So there's 100 of us here that aren't bankrupt, and we each have to pitch in to make up that $90, right? Because if that doesn't work, the whole system is kaplooey, right? Basically it's kaplooey. And this is exactly what happened in the financial crisis. What happened in the financial crisis was there was many famous cases like AIG. AIG wrote a bunch of insurance for things that should have never, from their view, never happened. And it happened. And credit default swaps. Yay, we won. And then what did they have available to cover it? How much did they put up for their bet? Pennies on the dollar. So they didn't have the money to pay out, right? So this is really important. So now, I, of course, don't want to keep talking about this GameStop and this pump and dump, but now there's something interesting here. See, what people look at and say, oh, Robinhood might have been in financial trouble, or maybe this one clearing firm was in trouble, or something like that. And it doesn't seem to me people are thinking the big picture. This sounds to me like we were very close for the system going kaplooey, because if they didn't stop this clearing firm could have had, not only them, could have had multiple participants going bankrupt, and if they didn't have the money, and they would have to go to other people to get the money. So think about it. Like, let's say I'm responsible and I'm betting $100 with people, and I got the $100, so I'm willing to bet it. But if there's 10 other people using the same clearing and they're only putting up $10, I mean, altogether, there may not be enough money there to cover if more than 2 or 3 of those people go bankrupt. And this is the type of thing that happened. This is what happened in the financial crisis. And it sounds to me, based on that interview, which, do your own research, it sounded like we might have actually, there was a bigger picture there. It sounded like the bigger picture was like, look, we don't want this to spiral into the entire system collapsing. Because think about it, you sit there, you're on Robinhood, you're like, oh, I bought a stock, oh, I sold a stock, oh, there's the money back in my account. Well, wait a minute, it takes 2 days to clear. They're just fronting you the money. Your money isn't really there. It's just a line item. It has to go through clearing. And if in the process of clearing, if there's too much stuff going on and counterparties are going bankrupt, it's a big problem. It's like, imagine you had a successful trade and you're like, wow, I'm up $1,000 on this trade. This was awesome. And then 2 days later, it's like the money disappears and they're like, well, sorry, your counterparty went bankrupt. So so you lost your money. You would be pissed. Now, since apparently what's going on at this, the hood, the Robin, is that they're doing a lot of options and a lot of call options. So I wanted to go in, I wanted to kind of just go over that a little bit. And once again, do your own research. So what I did is I actually took, this is from one of those tools, and this is the option price. Now, the purple line is theoretical option price. Just kind of ignore that. These bars, these big bars, are the actual options pricing. And this was for a GameStop. It was a call. It was a $50 strike call that's going to expire in March on 3/5. Okay. So now you look here before this pump and dump. Notice how it's following the trade in the chart. Like when you looked at the chart, it pumped and dumped, right? So look at the person that sold this thing, sold this for about $20. Like back here on the left, they sold this option for $20. So they might have sold a call for $20. And then up here, the value of that option, it went all the way up. Look at this high of 352. So call it 350. So the option that they're liable for, that they sold for $20 and got $20 for that option, now all of a sudden it's out there for 350. In addition, it's now in the money. So because that option is in the money, you can get assigned. And there's this whole thing about how brokers go about assigning people. But if you're short an option, which means that you wrote an option, you sold an option, you created it, and you can create a call and you can create a put. And you need a margin account, and it's very risky because if this thing happens, you're on the hook. Now, what are you on the hook for? Okay, so I'm going to take this here and I'm going to say, for example, here, you're like back here and you're like, hey, I'm selling this $50 strike call. I sold it for $20 and you're great. And so I sold 10 of them and the price was $20 and multiplying by 100 because each covers 10 shares. And you're like, cool, I made $20,000. Now, what are you betting on? You're betting that the price doesn't move, that it doesn't move into the money, and that the price of it doesn't move so much that it expires worthless. Then you get to keep the $20,000, right? Well, here's what happened. Okay, now all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, the price moved up. Now, the price of GameStop here is not relevant. It's just, we know it went up a lot. That's not important, but the option price is from the chart below. It went to 350. So let's look at it. Now, if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm on the hook for 350,000. I went from being on the hook for 20,000 to 350,000. And all of a sudden it's like, you may not have that money. Even a big financial institution may not have that money. I mean, you're looking at a profit and loss of you're down 330,000 in the hole on 10 bloody options. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of options being traded out there. So one option is to buy them back, go out on the market and buy them back. But that, of course, is you need a boatload of money to do that. The other thing is to keep in mind, this is what happens if you get assigned. If you get assigned at that point and the shares are trading at 200, you have to go out there and buy those shares and deliver those shares to the person with the call. You have to deliver it. So you have to go out there and spend 200,000. So the point I'm making is that you can be, this is, from my understanding, it's the professional people that are writing. It's the professional businesses, market makers that are writing the options. And it's a money-making business because this is very rare that this happens. Most of the time, people buy an option and it expires worthless. It's something like 90% of them expire worthless. So it's guaranteed money. It's like, hey, I sold this option to some sucker for $20,000, woohoo, and it expires worthless, and you get to keep the whole 20,000. But when these events happen, and these volatility events happen, all of a sudden they're like in really potentially deep trouble. So you can imagine that the hood was facing this, and all these other people are facing it, and you can imagine the clearinghouse who is like, hey, what the heck? They're worried, and I don't know which clearinghouse this is because this is options. This isn't stock. This is options. And not to mention the stock as well. If you actually short the shares, that's not even as less. So the point of this picture is that you can see how this could quickly lead to an insolvency event in the system. And it would basically, somewhere in the clearinghouses, they would get screwed. So let's say what happens at this point. Let's say, what is that person that made this trade really on the hook for? They're on the hook for returning the shares. So they're 180,000 behind, right? Because they're not going to go buy back their option if they don't have to. They're just going to be like, screw it. I'm going to have to be prepared to deliver the shares. It's kind of a complicated thing. You might not get assigned, but you could get assigned. So let's assume that you got assigned, right? So if that's the case, they got to go buy the shares. If they don't have the money, then someone's got to go out there and buy the shares to return the shares, to deliver on that option. So then it would fall over, based on the interview that I heard, it would fall over to the clearinghouse. The clearinghouse would have to come up with the $180,000. And the clearinghouse, of course, is going to have to just ask from it for all the other members that are clearing. So everyone around them, everyone using that clearinghouse is going to have to pitch in for that 180,000. So multiply this by $1 billion and you can start to see what the issue is. So it's very interesting. So this weird little thing of these people on this bulletin board doing this thing may very well have come close to like cracking the system. Because if they didn't get this price back down and these things stayed, if these numbers became real, because think about it. If, let's take an example. If, for example, they held the price up there, then all of these options are going to be assigned at the 200,000 or more, right? All of them will get assigned at some point if it goes to expiration and you aren't able to buy it back. Now, of course, this price will close, but that's my point. So this thing is really interesting. So couple things. Careful what you wish for. If you're like, oh, this is all great and this is all great, well, sure, but we're all going to be looking there at one day and going to be like, oh my gosh, where's the money? I thought I made $20,000 on the trade yesterday, and like, nope, you didn't. And then we'll get into SIPC and all that stuff. I don't know, but I think that this is what the real concern is, and it's interesting. It's just really interesting. See, it's not the stock necessarily that's the problem. It's the options. The options are the problem because the options are the ones that swing so heavy, right? They go from out of the money to into the money, and then the volatility picks up. Now, here's the counter to that. Okay, so here's the counter. So now I'm done being a bleeding heart for the guys, the market makers, right? Now the counter is, how are they going to do it? They just need lots of money, right? That's what it is. Because what are they doing up here? Oh, they are selling these at 350 every night and day. They're just selling as many as they can sell at 350, right? And people are buying them. And those people that are buying them got screwed, right? These that they paid $350, $300 for the options, where they trade now $11. So they've been killed, right? And they've made a bunch of money. So in the end, it's like, yeah, the people running these markets, they have a way to always win, but they have a problem of they do need deep liquidity at times. And that's what I think the concern was, because they needed that deep liquidity. Because basically if, the clearinghouse is looking at these huge numbers and being like, oh my gosh, and the truth is like, obviously someone was saying like, well, we don't have faith that you have the money. So that's kind of what it is. So I think that's it for this one. I just wanted to point that out. I think the way I want to describe it is, I'm an older guy. I was there for the tech crash. I remember that thing going down. I remember all the hype before it, and we're in the hype now. I remember, the late 90s. I remember the crash in, 08 and all that stuff. I mean, I was trading that stuff. I remember I had puts, went from $1 to $6 on Fannie and Freddie. Fannie and Freddie were traded. They had shares and you could buy options on them. And I got, woohoo. And matter of fact, I made some on that, but I remember shorting the housing markets with puts. And I made the first round, I made a boatload of money. And then the second round, I tried to do it again and lost, So the thing is, I'm trying to figure out like what's different this time. And it's not that it's different, meaning that this isn't going to crash. It's going to crash. I mean, it's going to come down, but I'm trying to find where it's going to come down. So basically, you look at the financial crisis, this type of stuff was going on in the balance sheets of the big banks with each other. Like these kind of negative numbers and stuff were showing up in there. In the Bear Stearns, in the Lehman Brothers, between them, they were looking at it in private, like pulling their money from each other and sending them into oblivion. Now it's maybe a little more public because this is kind of like a clearinghouse firm just trying to process orders, options orders and stock orders for the little hero Robinhood trade brokerages of the world that have kind of popped up. And it would be interesting if this is where it comes from. Instead of the big insider Wall Street guys, the collapse comes from the little guy putting too much pressure on the clearinghouses. That's just kind of what I'm really wondering. It just would be very ironic, It really would be ironic that, it's like, I mean, wouldn't it be? Like, there's people out there thinking like this is a social justice warrior thing. Like we got to fight against the big guys. We're the little guys, and the little guys destroy themselves. I mean, think about it. It's perfect. The irony of life. It's just perfect. This is how, if it happened, like I'm not saying it happened. I'm not a financial professional. I don't know. It's just really interesting to me that like, it would just be the thing that would be like, oh, great. The stock market gets cut in half again. Everyone loses a boatload of money. And these guys, like when you're in Robinhood, you're not going to lose 50%. You're going to lose 95% because these are all the hot stocks. They're hot. These are hot potatoes. And all these people are going to just lose all their money, get bankrupt. And you know what? What money are they losing? What money are they losing? They're losing their stimmy checks. So they're going to lose their stimmy checks. And they really needed the stimmy checks because like so many people are unemployed and struggling so bad. And they're just like gambling it. Oh, it would just be so and then, it's going to be like, oh, blame Wall Street again. It's like, well, okay, but this maybe isn't totally Wall Street. This is like the little guys don't realize the plumbing of the system that they're messing with. So I don't know. We'll see how it all works out, but that's it for this one. So bye.